Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Jin'talks. This time, taking a look back at the Blue Donut War, which has not only continued, but seemingly ramped up as various other blocks seem to be moving themselves into a position to get involved in the slowly expanding conflict, bringing their allies and their enemies with them. Still, before we get into that, let's take a look back at the southern theatre that we know and love. Here we've seen a slow erosion of unnamed coalition territory, with Detroit now looking increasingly DRF controlled as Solar has led the Intosis charge against them. However, it has proven to be a much bigger challenge to push back against the Citadel control that the unnamed coalition has in the regions, allowing them to continue to live and project from their space for the time being. The most notable major engagement that's taken place since my last update, however, took place when the unnamed coalition and PanFam faced off against the Legacy Coalition and Imperium in AX. The main objective which sparked this fighting was two ex-CO2 Fortizars, which had previously been transferred to PL control in order to provide them a staging point from which they could project their forces into catch. This battle had a particularly inauspicious beginning as the Imperium managed to catch NC.'s Loki fleet as it entered the theatre in 4NBN, using their Ferox fleet to take a significant bite out of the overall forces before they managed to disengage and make it to the main conflict. As the AX. Fortizar's repair timer started, TESS decided to use their capital assets, bringing in a medium-sized carrier fleet under the protection from a citadel of their own, which they had previously planted on grid. However, due to a lack of subcapital support, they were able to be defanged by the defenders, a term which means their fighters were destroyed and they had no more left in their fighter bays. Due to this, the carriers were unable to continue to pause the timer, allowing the Fortizar to repair as the attacking forces were reluctant to engage on a Fortizar grid due to the amount of pressure that it can provide. As both sides began to move away and towards the second Fortizar that was about to become vulnerable in BTAC-X, a brawl broke out on the MUXX-4 gate, with Pandemic Legion and Triumvirate attempting to push their way in towards the objective despite Legacy controlling the routes into the system. During this fight, the defending forces were able to secure the strategic objective of letting their other Fortizar repair its armor timer, though at a significant cost, with the unnamed coalition and PanFam losing 67 billion to their opponent's 37 billion. This is an especially big ISK gap due to the fact that the majority of the defenders' losses were in Macarials and Lokis, whereas their defenders primarily lost Maelstroms and Feroxes, which provide a significant percentage of their costs back in insurance payouts. One interesting political nuance to this fight in terms of the sides is the fact that the Red Menace Coalition, an Imperium-aligned sub-faction that consists of Red Alliance, Dreamfleet, and a few other Russian alliances, has worked alongside the unnamed coalition in this fight, despite being blue to the Imperium, who are assisting those attempting to destroy the Fortizars. This is due to their history with the Legacy Coalition in the time that Stainwagon was around and holding catch. Only time will tell if this is something that ends up dividing the two entities politically. But this is all stuff we've seen before. The main development in the war lies regions and regions away in the north, where another coalition has joined the campaign against the DRF forces. The Guardians of the Galaxy Coalition have decided to declare war against the DRF, with their stated goal being to extract vengeance from the DRF after they posted test briefly during their simultaneous strike with the Imperium in the north during the 2-week war. However, the exact story behind how this was declared and put into action is an example of just how deep the metagame can go in terms of setting up fights. The current animosity between the GOTG and DRF started when UAX Def agreed to host tests during their op in the north, which is something that we covered in my Nullsec August update, a move which directly harmed the Guardians of the Galaxy, but was done with the intent of securing Test as an ally of the DRF in case of a potential war with Tri, which turned into the Blue Donut War which we're currently experiencing. This soured the pre-existing diplomatic relationships from the Guardians of the Galaxy side, and as such it seems that after this point, plans began being laid for an assault on DRF territories in order to extract revenge. On the DRF side, in an attempt to apologise, plans were laid by the DRF to set up a mutual defence pact with the Guardians of the Galaxy, along with a rider of a mercenary contract to help in the south. It should be noted that this order of events does not match those presented in the Eve News 24 article which kicked this into the public domain. However, it is something that I have checked with both sides of the conflict and they've agreed to this timeline. In general, as the writer of the article and head of Eve News 24 is seemingly emotionally involved in the conflict, as indicated by the direct calling out of an individual, irrespective of its truth, I can't really take it as a neutral source for this area of the conflict. These war plans lay dormant for a while as the DRF became embroiled in the main theatre of the Blue Donut War in the south, battling Triumvirate, CO2 and Fraternity, or the Unnamed Coalition as they would come to be known, and absorbing the Phoenix Federation as a sub-entity into their greater coalition, once again as we went over in the August nullsec update. During Eve Vegas, these plans kicked into gear as Bocky made moves indicating that he was attempting to start a war with the DRF as a semi-coup against Sword Dragon, the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy coalition. This was then cemented by the placing of a Keepstar in MTO and attacks on the iHub. This forced the leadership of the DRF to split their energy, spending time both trying to reach a diplomatic solution with the AFK Sword Dragon and forming a military response to the dropping of a Keepstar. As the timer neared, however, the facts became significantly more clear. Bocky had been told to present the front of a fake coup in order to throw the DRF off the trail, whilst in reality he was following Sword Dragon's orders the whole time. So, as Sword Dragon flew back from Vegas, the fight was on. The whole weight of the Guardians of the Galaxy coalition was to be leveraged in MTO in order to secure a supercapital beachhead in Peregrine Falls. The fight itself was absolutely brutal, with the Guardians of the Galaxy quickly leveraging the fact that the DRF's supercapital fleet was not in the immediate area, having been deployed to the south in order to support their allies there, and using its absence to bring in their own supercapital force, whilst leaving the DRF with no real counter, placing 85 supers and titans on grid in order to defend their online in Keepstar alongside heavy capital and supercapital support. Given this, the forces intent on preventing this Keepstar from onlining were outmatched in terms of sheer combat capability by this Apex force. However, they were not dissuaded from their attack by this, instead deciding to use tactics similar to the ones used in both 3D TAC by Providence, or perhaps more accurately by the anti-No Handlebars forces in Augur in June 2017. The attacking forces sacrificed wave after wave of both dreads and subcaps on the grid, whilst the supercapital forces of the Guardians of the Galaxy sat in their own bubbles, attempting to catch warpins from the attacking forces, but reducing their ability to move around the grid and clear these separated pockets of attacking ships, mostly dreadnoughts, all the while the structure of the online in Keepstar was slowly being worked away at. This is primarily effective as upwell structures cannot be repaired, meaning that as long as the attacking forces keep the timer paused for a long enough period of time and continue to deal damage, it will eventually die. The fight went on for just shy of 6 hours and involved 2,489 different players, with just over 1 trillion ISK being lost during the engagement. The Guardians of the Galaxy lost 568 billion to the DRF-aligned forces' 443 billion, with third parties adding up to another 33 billion on top. The majority of the ISK lost on the Guardians of the Galaxy side comes from their Keepstar's eventual death, after which their opponents ceded the field, their objective won at the cost of 110 dreadnoughts and 140 battleships. Of particular note amongst the losses are a pair of Guardians of the Galaxy Nixes, which were reportedly lost due to disconnects and late relocks that left them trapped on the grid after the Guardians of the Galaxy had extracted, significantly increasing the overall cost of the fight for the coalition. Following this battle, the Guardians of the Galaxy coalition led several Intosis attacks against DRF SOV, and successfully managed to capture a small border area close to their staging in Venal. It should be noted that we won't see SOV flip particularly fast, as TCUs are completely irrelevant to SOV warfare currently. And as we've seen, citadels seem to be the only thing providing the single point concentration of force required to kick off major fights. It seems likely that the next big fight will come over MTO, however, given the ping made by Sword Dragon during the fight itself, where he declared that he had another Keepstar to drop, although I'm currently looking at a Fortizar onlining in MTO and waiting to see if something develops around it. Zooming out from these individual fights, however, we can see just how complex the web has gotten around the DRF in this war, with both Pandemic Legion, who are currently staged in Curse, and the Unnamed Coalition, which consists of Triumvirate, Fraternity and Lumpy, attacking both their allies in the Legacy Coalition and the now absorbed Phoenix Federation alliances in the south, already splitting up their allies across two major theatres there, with catch being a focus from the Unnamed Coalition and their allies, whilst the DRF continues to pursue a counter-offensive on the remaining regions of Wicked Creek, Scalding Pass and Innsmother that the Unnamed Coalition still has strong control over. Following these recent actions, a new theatre has opened up in the north, with the Guardians of the Galaxy Coalition, primarily consisting of Darkness, Slice and several others, pressuring the core holdings of the Coalition in the drone regions from their staging in Venor. This has been lightly supported by NC Dot, who have sent subcaps to a few fights. However, they don't seem to be taking this in a particularly serious capacity, and NC Dot has denied officially picking a side in the war at the current time. As you might be able to tell from this map alone, this puts the DRF in quite a bind, as it will have to choose where to position its super capital fleet, and stage the many sub-factions that make up the coalition carefully, in order to prosecute both a defensive and an offensive war, as they attempt to protect themselves from hostile forces that lie on both ends of the cluster. Fortunately, however, it seems that the Imperium has some interest in helping the Legacy Coalition defeat the attacks of PanFam in the south, as stopping PanFam or their allies from gaining a foothold nearby seems to be of strategical interest for them, especially given their moves to take control of Fountain from the culture as they began to fall apart. Overall, it seems that the Blue Donut, which had been so tenuously established following the post-World War B shuffle, is quickly falling apart, degenerating into a conflict with two clear opposing sides all across the universe. Even my own coalition, Proviblock, is nominally involved, having made a minor contribution in AX Dot against the PanFam coalition and their allies in the Unnamed Coalition, as a response to their continuing attacks on Providence. So, as the cluster descends once again into the fiery turmoil of blood and steel, ask yourself, whose side are you on? As always, here are my social media details if you'd like to contact me directly with feedback, be it positive or negative, along with my Patreon URL if you'd like to support the show directly. And I'd like to end the show with a quick shout out to everyone who's helped me put together information about this. It wasn't easy and there was a lot of propaganda to dig through, but it was well worth it, I think. So with that, take care and fly smart.